It's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, on top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
As is our tradition, every Thursday we keep it short, sharp and sweet. And this season on ZiFM Sport, your favorite sports show, we are running a season of Power Profiles where we profile your favorite sports stars, your favorite sports teams, your favorite sports events, and we give you a lowdown about what happened, how they lived their lives, and how they carried their careers. And we've started an interesting one on Africa's most inspirational Olympians. And last week, we kicked off with our very own Minister of Sport, Kirsty Coventry, who is the most decorated African Olympian, having won multiple gold medals, silver medals, as well as the bronze medal in the pool at the Summer Olympics. Today is part 2, and we go to Namibia and we talk about the king of African sprinting, Frankie Fredericks, who during a long and illustrious sporting career, he competed at the pinnacle of international athletics for 12 years. Frankie Fredericks established himself as the most successful sprinter Africa has ever produced. He was born on the 2nd of October in 1967 in Namibia's capital, Windhoek. And Fredericks is a 4-time Olympic silver medalist, finishing second in the 100 meters and 200 meters at Barcelona 92 and again at Atlanta 96. He also claimed the 200 meter gold at the 1993 World Championships in Stuttgart. And today, he's the subject of our Power Profile. We'll get to talk about him with Barry Manandi, Chris Meadsey, our producer is Sean Taferinika, and my name is Mike Madoda.
Hi, this is Alexandra Maseko, and I'm the national basketball team captain, and you're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Z.
Don't forget, you can be part of the conversation on social media. Simply follow and interact with @ZFM Sport. Even in our individual capacities, simply search for us by name. So we're talking about Frankie Fredericks, the man who has been dubbed the king of African sprinting. And his Olympic career can best be summed up with the following statement: always a bridesmaid, but never the bride, simply because though he yearned for a gold medal at the Olympics, he managed to bag silver medals all the way. Like I said again at the top of the show, 3-time Olympian with 4 Olympic silver medals in the 100 meters and 200 meters at Barcelona and in Atlanta. He is without a doubt the king of African sprinting and the man who gave Africa the belief that she too could compete with the rest of the world in not just the long distance races, but also in the more glamorous sprints. But his childhood was far from glamorous, very modest, if not poor childhood. But what he had was a wealth of genes. He came from a sporting family, didn't he, Barry?
Yeah, he came from a sporting family, and in particular his mom. He was born to Mrs. Ricky Fredericks. She was called Auntie Ricky in Namibia, and I think it was her sporting prowess in that she actually played netball, tennis, and a bit of football. But beyond that, was also a big sporting fan and administrator. We know, and she was one of the biggest fans of a club called Black Africa Sports Club out in Namibia. And eventually went on to be a long-serving executive committee member of that same club. So I think with sport around him, sport building around him, it was always going to be that he was going to follow the path of sport. And in fact, I think that's where his passion for football actually came from, because yes, he liked athletics, but I think his number one passion was football. And he actually went on to play for Black Africa in the top flight of Namibian League for Black Africa at a very young age, which shows that his stock was good, sport was in his blood, and that he achieved the things that he achieved. And some of the things that you ran through in the introduction to this profile is no surprise when you then look back at Auntie Ricky, who was a big influence on his life.
Definitely a big influence, similar to the influence that Kirsty Coventry's parents had on her career at the tender age of 9. They were able to influence her and to point her in the right direction. Now, Kirsty Coventry, coming from what some would say a privileged background, Chris, and Frankie Fredericks, though, he comes from the townships. He came from a poor background. But again, we see the importance of parents in this process.
Yeah, so Frankie Fredericks not necessarily coming from a privileged background, but we see it across athletes from the African continent, where there is a parent who recognizes the talent, where there is that nurturing from the home background. We see these athletes do well. Frankie Fredericks, Kirsty Coventry, there's countless names, but that initial investment in a young athlete is incredibly important, and more often than not, it's not the schools, it's not the systems, it's a parent who makes that initial investment.
And of course, that parent was the lady famously known as Aunt Ricky out in Windhoek. And she also had someone who supported her, the Madam Marley Schneiman, who was also a legend of sport in Windhoek in those days. So Frankie Fredericks is young, he's motivated, he's got the parental support. At the age of 13, that's when he really gets into it, realizes that he has a passion for both athletics and football. He then, of course, focuses on his education. He didn't dream initially of having a big or a great sporting career, but he set about his business, always played sport in his formative years, played football at a very high level, actually, in Namibia, playing in their Premier League there, where he was a renowned goal scorer, often dazzling defenders with his pace and trickery. But then he got his big breakthrough, didn't he, Chris, when in 1987, whilst he was working for an organization in Namibia, he was able to get a scholarship that took him to the land of hope and dreams, that is the United States of America. And we say the land of hope and dreams as far as athletics is concerned.
As far as athletics and sport is concerned, I think it's one of the places that we see a lot of athletes going to. And Frankie Fredericks, at this point, he's 20 years old. He gets a scholarship to go to a university in Utah. It was called Brigham Young University. And when he wasn't studying, because he actually did go through with his studies, he then was able to focus on athletics. And like we've talked about before, the same as Kirsty Coventry, you have the right environment in terms of the systems and structures, but you also have the right expertise around you. And that's what then set Frankie Fredericks apart. Was he had the talent. We've seen he's a brilliant athlete. But in order for you to go to that next level, there was a university in Utah that was willing to take him on a scholarship and develop him as an athlete.
And whilst he was at that university, the Brigham Young University out in Utah, he actually set personal bests of 10.32, and that was in the 100-meter dash, and 20.57 during his first year. And then he was a double NCAA sprint finalist in his remaining 3 years. So Barry, competing at that level at Brigham University, he's starting now to make a mark on the American collegiate system. And once you do that, it means that you are immediately amongst the world's best.
Absolutely, because of the professional nature with which they approach the sport, the professional nature with which they approach athletics and swimming in particular, because whenever you see the athletes in America begin to make that step up, they start from the collegiate system and then move their way up. And you look at him entering the 1991 season, he had earned 11 All-American citations and was BYU's record holder in both the 100 meters and 200-meter sprints already at that stage. If you are at that level, you're on a world level, you're ready to go on to the Olympics. We've seen countless examples, and you mentioned one earlier in Kirsty Coventry, where at university in the United States, she was able to represent the country at the Olympics.
Well, 1991 was his crowning year on the collegiate scene, where he actually won the 100-meter and 200-meter double, and he became the first non-American to capture this very prestigious sprint double. So he was right there on the doorway to success, and the only thing that was left was for him to translate that college form onto the Olympic scene, and he would have the opportunity to do so in 1992 at Barcelona. But before we get to his Olympic feats, which are what we want to talk about, Chris, the importance of not only being successful on the track and field, but also making sure that whilst you're doing that, you are setting yourself up for the future. Because Frankie Fredericks, exemplary and fantastic on the track, but he was also no mug in the classroom.
No mug in the classroom at all. And he actually managed to complete a master's in business administration, majoring in finance and marketing in the US. He also got a scholarship opportunity for that. And it's different for a lot of athletes, and I'm going to say specifically a lot of African athletes, and that's our sportsmen and women across, who don't necessarily prepare for that life after their career as an athlete. And this is what he managed to do, is to get that degree, get the academics. And for you to get a master's of business administration, you need to have a bit about you. Yes, he was a brilliant athlete, but this was also a very intelligent man.
Very intelligent man, Barry, and of course it's no surprise that Frankie Fredericks won a lot of friends and admirers both on the track and off the track. Now let's go to his Olympic career, because here's a guy who managed to win silver medals twice in successive Olympic Games, okay? Barcelona, Atlanta, in the 100-meter dash and the 200 meters, competing against the best athletes in the world. He was able to hold his own, and he was always able to push the winning athletes to do their best. This was Frankie Fredericks. He might not have got the gold, Barry, but he showed that Africa could compete with the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And Africa took ownership of Frankie Fredericks, because in truth, what he was achieving, and those are two of the showpiece events at Olympic Games, the 100 meters and the 200 meter dash. And for an African to be pushing the likes of your Michael Johnsons, some proclaim him the greatest of all time when it comes to certainly the 200 meters, and him being right there at the cusp of actually beating Michael Johnson, then you begin to realize just how good this guy was. And then also the fact that he's African meant that he was no longer Namibian. He began to transcend his nationality and begin to be owned by Africa. And I think that's an important component, because he made Africa dream. Africa, yes, we've got events that we compete in, your longer distances and all sorts, but the sprints have never been our forte. So that's why I think Frankie Fredericks sort of catapults himself into that legendary status.
And he really was flying the African flag, wasn't he, Chris? Because I like what Barry said, that, here's an athlete who competed with the likes of Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson, absolutely legendary 200 meter and 400 meter runner. And then he lost out to Linford Christie, I think, in Barcelona. And then he lost out to Donovan Bailey in Atlanta. But when you take a look at the way that he competed, he became someone who every African fan, when we were watching on TV, we were supporting him not as a Namibian, but we were supporting him as an African. He was flying the flag for Africa. He transcended the boundaries.
He definitely transcended, because if you take a look at it, before Frankie Fredericks, what we had was Africans would compete in certain events, and we were known to do well in certain events, especially the long distance running. We knew Ethiopian, for example, athletes from East Africa would do well in those races. It was a common known thing. But here comes Frankie Fredericks, and he's competing and winning and doing well in races where we wouldn't normally compete, and he's doing incredibly well. So that's where, I think, he almost inspired a completely different generation, where there was something that young African athletes could look up to and say, you know what, this is a realistic proposition. And that representation was so pivotal for African athletes in a generation to come.
There is no doubt why he's called the king of African sprints. In the early 90s, he was certainly in fine fettle and at the peak of his career. In 1993, he would go on to win his first world title, winning the 200 meters at the World Championships in Stuttgart, Germany. Now, Frankie Fredericks says Stuttgart 93 was his favorite performance in a year that he was crowned the world's best. Let's hear from Frankie.
I think the favorite performance will probably be Stuttgart 93. I think that was probably the moment for me when I won the gold medal. I think the 2 silvers in Barcelona was also great. And here I was winning the gold medal in front of obviously somebody that I've idolized for so long, Carl Lewis, and I think that was probably the defining moment for me to be able to say that I'm the world champion, I'm the best ever that have raced the 200 meters, and plus to set the African record at the same stage. So I think for me that was probably the defining moment to say that it was possible for someone to come from humble beginnings and to be able to go to a world stage and win a sprinting gold medal.
Z. Now let's take a look at the medal haul of Africa's sprint pioneer. 4 medals at the Olympic Games, 92 and 1996, winning silvers in the 100 meters and 200 meters at both games. At the Commonwealth, he won silver at the Victoria Games in the 100 meters, gold in the 200 meters, and then he was able to win another gold at the Commonwealth Games that were held in 2002 in Manchester. That was, of course, in 200 meters. We did talk about the gold medal he won at Stuttgart in the 200 meters, but he also won silvers at Athens, Gothenburg, as well as Tokyo. Talking about the All Africa Games, gold medal 1991 Cairo, that's in the 100 meters. Gold medal 1991 Cairo 200 meters. Silver medal in the 200 meters in Abuja 2003, and a bronze medal in 1999 at the Johannesburg competition where he won the 100 meters. Now, you've got to say, Barry, that a guy like this, Chris talked about his academic qualifications, his achievements. He was no mug in the classroom, someone well respected by his fellow pros, as well as the IOC, who ultimately took him on board.
They did indeed, and I think it started with the fact that he had the respect of his fellow athletes, his fellow professionals, and I think that's a measure for all athletes across all disciplines, whereby if you are respected by your peers, I think the limit is really the sky, because he worked diligently first and foremost for his fellow athletes, and that was as a member of the IAAF's Athletes Commission. He was also on the African Athletes Confederation. He was the Athletes Commission chairman, as well as being the Namibian National Olympic Committee's Athletes Commission chair as well. And in those positions, he preferred all of the basic necessities, the welfare, the improvement of the lives of his fellow pros. And then in Athens, they elected him onto the Athletes Commission of the IOC. And the IOC, like you quite rightly pointed out, then realized the potential of the man, put him right to work, and made him a member of the evaluation committee of the 2012 Olympic site selection.
Frankie Fredericks distinguishing himself off the track, and there is one reason why: he always had a work ethic to match his talent. He himself says that he wants to be remembered for that maximum effort that he put throughout his career.
I want people to remember that I gave 100% regardless of what type of race it was, not just 100% at World Championships or 100% at Olympic Games, but I give 100% at all races when people invite me to come, because I respected them, that they inviting me especially, and they're paying for me to run. So I think I gave 100%, and that's basically what I want people to remember, and to remember that even if you lose, you should lose in humility.
Z. So Frankie Fredericks, a guy who always went out and gave 100%. No surprises that the IOC have lashed onto his administrative abilities as a result of the profound respect that he has amongst athletes as well as administrators and even the corporate world out there. He obviously has earned quite a bit of money, Chris, over his career. He would have been earning a lot more now, believe me, with the money that's flying around in sport if he had been an athlete in this present generation. But he made enough, sufficient for him to reinvest in communities, especially in Namibia.
Yeah, he actually started the Frank Fredericks Foundation, and that basically promotes the development of talented young Namibians, and that's Namibian athletes, and also the improvement of sporting facilities themselves in Namibia, which I think is really great because he's plowing back into the environment that groomed him as an athlete. He also works with an organization called Champions Through Peace, and they promote peace in the world through sport. So he's consistently plowing back now after his career as an athlete as well, which is, I think, one of the best things an athlete can do for their own home.
Now, Barry, we've had one or two athletes as we wrap up, and very quickly from you, because this might be a touchy one. We've had one or two athletes that have really excelled in Zimbabwe. Is this an area that disappoints you, that we haven't seen our athletes plow back into Zimbabwean communities to the extent that we see in other African countries, whether it's Frankie Fredericks in Namibia, or Haile Gebrselassie in Ethiopia, and Kipchoge out in Kenya? We hear these marvelous stories of these athletes building things, investing in things. We don't get to hear many of those stories in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, no, Mike, I think the report card will read can do better. Because we've seen a bit of investment from the likes of your Heat Streaks, Alistair Campbell's. They've put down academies, cricket academies, where there's actual infrastructure. They've partnered with corporate, obviously, to put those structures down at Old George and then out in Mulayo for Heat Streak. And then you've got the likes of Tulani Via Ngwe. You've got other former players who are doing academies and giving back, like in the form of kits and all sorts. But we're not seeing enough infrastructural development and the changing of lives in underprivileged and disadvantaged communities by former sports stars. So we certainly can do better, and I hope that the foundations that have been set up by some of these players who are playing outside the country will begin to look into that and begin to actually put a footprint down.
Frankie Fredericks, the kid that grew up on the dusty streets of Windhoek, played football initially and then went on to conquer America's collegiate scene before becoming the king of African spins. He has been the subject of today's Power Profile here on ZiFM Sport. Now, just for you to take home, Frankie Fredericks' African 200-meter record of 19.68 seconds, set as he finished second behind Michael Johnson at Atlanta 1996, remains intact to this day, as does his indoor world record of 19.92, which recorded in France in February of the same year. He is the world indoor record holder for the 200 meters, running 19.92 seconds in 1996. He is the oldest man to have broken 20 seconds for the 200 meters when on 12 July 2002 in Rome, he won the 200 meters in 19.99 seconds at the age of 34 years, 283 days. He ran sub 10 seconds in the 100 meters on no less than 27 occasions and recorded 24 sub 20 second finishes in the 200 meters. He certainly is an inspirational figure as far as Africa's participation is concerned in the Olympic Games.
How is it, guys? Elvis Tibulayo Bomba Moyo, WPF.
This is the bomb.
All Africa heavyweight champion 2-time. You are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Let's wrap it up with our play of the day. It is Throwback Thursday. We play a track called Omapenda Fule. It's by Top Sheri. And in Namibia, Omapenda Fule is an Oshiwambo word, which means heroes. The song celebrates the heroes of Namibia. And one of the best is Frankie Fredericks. We're done for today. We'll catch you next week. Have a fantastic Easter, everybody. And we'll catch you on Tuesday for Top Hit Tuesday after a weekend of great sport. Enjoy it. May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manandi, out.